Okay, I've went ahead and started that.
I see it.
We're good.
Welcome all, whoops. I was going to also welcome Mr. Pugh, but it says he's connecting to audio, so I don't know if he can hear that welcome or not.
And Miss Newton, I did send Randy Frank the link as well for this.
I saw that email. Thank you very much. And while we wait on our final 2 minutes to start the meeting, I will also just send her a quick message to make sure she has everything she needs.
Okay.
Councilwoman Newton. How you doing, ma'am?
Welcome, Councilman Pugh. I tried to welcome you earlier, but you were still connecting to your audio, so I don't know if you heard me.
No, ma'am, I didn't, but I did get your correspondence today. I appreciate all your efforts to keep me up to speed.
Well, thank you, sir, and I'm glad you could join us. We have 1 more minute to go according to my clock. All right, according to my clock, it is 1:30, so I will officially call the Employee Evaluation and Oversight meeting to order. Ms. Mathis, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Malinowski,
Here.
McBride,
Here.
Mackey,
Here.
English, Newton.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Mathis. And I also want to recognize others who have joined us in addition to the committee. We have Councilman Derek Pugh, who has joined us. We have our administrator, Leonardo Brown, who has joined us. And we also have our consultant who is assisting us with the county attorney search, Randy Frank, who has joined us today on our meeting. Chairman Livingston planned to attend our meeting, but did send me a message to let me know that something urgent came up and he won't be able to attend, at least not at the start of the meeting. And I'd also like to acknowledge that Councilwoman Allison Terracio has just joined us.
Thank you all. Good to be here.
Thank you, Ms. Terracio. That brings us to item 2 on our agenda, which is the adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair. Having a hard time clicking unmute.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. That's why I'm usually looking around a little bit. Thank you. Right. It has been moved and properly seconded to adopt the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English, Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is the discussion of the county attorney position. Some of that discussion can happen in open session, and some of that discussion as it relates to salary and contractual matters would be in executive session. So why don't we start that conversation? Ms. Frank, if you would, our council members were sent, the documents that you provided. If you wouldn't mind providing an overview again of what your process is for finding the county attorney, what we have before us, and what approvals and information you'll need from us so that you can move forward. Keeping in mind, of course, that we are a committee and we will take everything to full council for full council blessing and vote tonight. Thank you, Ms. Frank.
Thank you. So I sent the county attorney job description. I took the information from what the Councilwoman Newton gave me and also what the Department of HR gave me, used their format, added in some things. We can talk about more things. I think I covered everything in your original document that you received of job description. The biggest change from what the county had was they did not have the 10 years. I put in the 10 years since that was what everybody was talking about. And so I highlighted some of the areas that made changes so that based on all of my interviewing and discussions with everybody, what I added to the HR one. Also gave you the profile with all the pretty pictures and gave you a profile text so you can look at the actual words and edit those if you want to, and then I'll put it into the document. I got all the pictures from Mr. Brown's office. I got a lot of the data about the county from Mr. Brown's office. And the characteristics of the ideal candidate and the opportunities are what I learned from talking with all of the council members that we talked to and all the attorney's office and the administrator's office. And I sent in a separate thing a document from the South Carolina Association of Counties so you could see what other attorneys were making. So for that discussion in executive session, we have that.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. I'd also like to recognize Councilwoman Gretchen Barron, who has joined us today. And I see that Mr. Malinowski has his hand raised. If I may first say, Randy Frank mentioned a document that I sent regarding job description. Just want to clarify what that was. Our effort last year as part of the committee was to update the job description for the county attorney. And the document that I sent to Ms. Frank was what I received from then Deputy Attorney Brad Farah and County Attorney Larry Smith that took the document from HR and added the requirements that they thought were important. And so the difference that Ms. Frank mentioned in terms of experience was a recommendation from those attorneys that it should require 10 years of experience. Just wanted to clarify what that source document was. With that, Mr. Malinowski, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe Ms. Frank answered it, but I want to make sure. The class description that we were provided, that with the highlighted sections, are the highlighted sections the added language that Ms. Frank's recommending?
Yes, it was stated in similar way, but I sort of reworded it to make sure that I covered everything that everyone talked about. There were some repeat sentences, so that's why I rewrote some of the section there. For example, the Freedom of Information official, I don't think was in anybody's job description, and I made sure that they know that that's their job. As you know, they do that. So the highlighted ones were the major changes.
All right, so what we have in front of us, though, is your amended job description. We don't have the original one. Is that correct? From some
Unless Councilwoman Newton sent it to you, I do have it. But I took that one and the HR combined it to make this one.
Okay, well, I just like to see the original one before I do any final votes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. And I see that Ms. McBride has her hand raised, but Ms. Frank, there may be other documents that people request. So at the end of this meeting, perhaps you and I can coordinate to make sure that those items get sent. And Mr. Malinowski, whether it comes from Ms. Frank or from me, we'll make sure that every council member gets that. Ms. McBride?
Yes, Ms. Frank, I've read the profile that you've developed using various sources. And Richland County sounds like a very interesting place to live.
I thought so.
Ms. McBride, did you have any additional questions or feedback about the description? Mr. Malinowski?
Yes, are we supposed to make our comments now on anything here relating to the profile of these other items, the advertisement?
I would love that from my standpoint, so I can change it for your 6 o'clock meeting if you guys decide you want to make some changes.
Well, I just had some questions and they may just be me and doesn't really make any difference to anyone else. But I've got the profile text right now that you sent us.
Okay,
And in the second sentence toward the end, in parentheses, for the South Carolina main campus, you wrote, drawing thousands of students each year. I just believe sometimes we get a little too wordy with things, and I don't know what bearing or importance that really has. If anybody wants to know how many students are there, they can look it up. This is just a generic comment, drawing thousands. Certainly major universities have thousands of students, so I don't see the point in putting that there. When you go down to paragraph 1, 2, 3, the fourth one, where it starts, Richland County employs nearly 20,000 in the finance and insurance industry. In first read of that, I was thinking, we being Richland County, the Richland County government doesn't employ that.
Right.
And I thought maybe in order for the purpose of having it read for better understanding, it could say nearly 20,000 are employed in the finance and insurance industry in Richland County through these companies. And in that same paragraph, the last sentence where it starts out, also boosting the local economy, the university's presence has led to an influx of housing, restaurants, etc. I believe also boosting the local economy, we need to add in there Fort Jackson, Shaw and McIntyre air bases as well. And maybe you don't want Shaw and McIntyre if they're a little too far out, but certainly Fort Jackson is a huge booster of our local economy. And I believe they should be cited in there.
okay.
And when you
Yep,
get
I
over,
can make-
well, I mean, that'd be the rest of the committee having to decide if they want it or not just me. But over under characteristics of the ideal candidate, under the second arrow, county council and county administrator are looking for a county attorney that works cooperatively. If the attorney reports to the council, then I don't know. I realize the county administrator wants to have a good attorney, but it's the council that makes the final decision. And that's why previously in other meetings, I said, maybe the attorney needs to report to the administrator. But at this point, since the attorney does not report to the administrator, I think that it's the council that's doing the hiring. So it's the council that is looking for the attorney and making the decision to hire. And
Malinowski?
yes.
I apologize for interrupting you. I just
That's
wanted to ask a clarifying question about that specific point. Certainly the position reports to the county council. Would you feel okay if it was that county council was looking for an attorney? Well, never mind, because we certainly want our attorney to work cooperatively with the county administrator.
Oh,
but we
yeah. I
also
mean, looking for a
want
county attorney who
with everybody.
works with the administrator and other departments. That's fine to put that in there.
Thank you.
I can adjust the wording so that it says that.
Okay. And the last 3 words in that particular paragraph or long sentence where it says, as well as legal issues to improve services. I'm not so sure that it's up to the attorney to improve the services as much as it is now the administrator, the other departments, and the council. The attorney is working at the direction of all of these other individuals, but not on their own going out and making changes. At least I don't think they are. In your second,
Right.
in your next arrow where it starts, ability to work with a diverse council, including longtime members with historical knowledge and many new members willing to make changes in improving the image and public trust of the county. Sounds like only the new members are willing to make the changes in the public trust.
That's true.
I just think including longtime members and many new members who are all willing to make changes and get the public trust.
Okay.
And I think it maybe had, let's see. Supports continue. And down your second one up from the bottom on that same page, highly supportive of staff and supports continued professional development for both staff and self. I don't believe the attorney is the one, maybe they'll support it, but I think that's up to the administrator and the department heads to make sure professional development takes place at the staff level.
This was specifically for the attorney's staff.
Attorney staff. Okay, that's fine then. That's fine. Your next page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The ninth bullet where it says engages people.
Yep.
Wants to leave his or her mark by improving the county. I'm just not so sure about that because the attorney works at the direction of the council, the staff, I mean, the administrator, and they act on legal matters within the system. They don't necessarily engage people and try to leave their mark by improving the county, I don't believe. I mean, yes, they want the county improved, but they can only do what direction they're given. They don't go out on their own and start to come up with ideas to try and do this.
I guess the reason I put that in there was a lot of people that I talked about that the county attorney needed to look into the future of what was needed for legal issues and policies to make sure that services could be improved or changed. And that was one of the ways that I was trying to point that out, that most of the council talked about that they didn't want just legal advice. They wanted assistance with policy advice and also to work with the operations to provide policy or operational advice that under the legal heading, how can we do this legally to get this service done? So that was my attempt at trying to get that issue into the list.
Well, I would think that would somehow be better summed up with just what you said, that engages with county personnel in an effort to make sure that the county is moving forward in a proper legal manner and has all of the new laws that go into place so that we know what they are. Under opportunities.
Mr. Malinowski,
Yes.
just a quick question, because I see that there also, Ms. McBride has had her hand raised. Just for my information, about how many more of these do you have?
I tell you what, I got a couple more, but let Ms. McBride go ahead and then I'll come back if you just recognize me later. That's fine.
Happy to do that. Ms. McBride?
Oh, no, I was only commenting on Mr. Malinowski's recommendations. And so far I have agreed with all of them, but the first one regarding the University of South Carolina. And I think that's very important to put in that number because that's one of our biggest marketing points in Richland County. So I think we should need to include that, but I agree with you, Mr. Malinowski, on the others.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McBride. And then you've convinced me we can leave in the drawing thousands. That's fine.
Thank you, Ms. McBride, and thank you, Mr. Malinowski. And I don't see any other hands raised. So Mr. Malinowski, you are recognized again.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I've got two more, I think, here under opportunities, the very first bullet. where it says about the county attorney office operation and use of outside consulting attorneys, and propose a new method of doing business, which could include hiring new attorneys. I'm not so sure about that. I would think when it comes to the county doing business, again, that's up to the administrator, his staff, and the council to determine what method of business is being conducted. And as far as to include hiring new attorneys, again, that's something that comes up at budget time or throughout the year. If it's an out of cycle request, if attorneys are needed, that's something that an attorney can bring to the council and request. But I don't think we want to let people think that they can come in and automatically say, well, hey, I need to hire 2 more attorneys. You said right here that I could do it. I don't think we want to be putting a promise or alluding to the fact that this is something they can do without them really understanding the process first.
Mr. Malinowski,
Yes.
it looks like Ms. Frank wants to say something. Would you be okay if we
Sure.
address
No,
this
go ahead.
point?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. In that one, a number of people talked about whether you needed as many outside consulting attorneys versus inside. I can see taking out the hiring new attorneys, but doing business is meant doing business to make a robust attorney's office. Every attorney's office does it differently. For example, I've seen county attorney's office where one attorney is assigned to all contracts and one attorney is assigned to these 10 departments and another attorney is assigned to these 10 departments. So the objective from discussion from everyone was that the attorney should look at the way they put together how the attorney's office has been operated and whether they should do as much consulting attorneys or not, and how they should assign people. For example, you now have attorneys 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think are their titles in the sense of their classification. A new attorney may say, you know what, I need only 1, that's a 1, but everybody else needs to be a 3 and above because I'm gonna have them do all these things. So that was the objective of this thing, but I can understand taking out the hiring new attorneys. They will be hiring new attorneys because you have vacancies, but that's a different, a situation. Because I can put that as a separate opportunity, is that they will be hiring attorneys because they have vacancies.
I don't believe that should be in the job opportunity, the county's budget matter, that there may be vacancies, but right now, if there's no money to fill those vacancies, I don't know what that structure is.
Mr. Malinowski, before we move to the next point, Ms. McBride has her hand raised to address this point. If you're not done, please continue on this first line.
Address Ms. Frank's comments, and that was where she does propose a new method of doing business. From what I'm hearing now, I think maybe, and have the opportunity to propose a restructuring if needed within the attorney's office. I just read that to mean a new method of doing business for the county. But if it's within their own office, then restructuring, that's fine. I don't care what they do there. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Ms. McBride, could I make one quick budgetary point before you make your point? I have information from finance that whether or not the attorney decides to do so, we do in fact have money in our budget to fill the vacant positions that we have in the attorney's office. Just wanted to mention that.
Well, that may be, but I just don't think in hiring somebody that we put something like that in your job advertisement. That, and by the way, folks, the budget says you could hire so many more attorneys. I just don't think so.
Sure.
Let them get in-house and then find out what it's all about.
Gotcha. Ms. McBride and then Newton.
Okay. I know one of the conversations we had in selecting the interim was about the hiring process. And I went over this a number of times because based on the information that I received, the attorney has the sole responsibility of hiring other attorneys. And I thought that was an interesting statement being made when we were having the discussion, because I thought that the council would have final approval, but that's not the case. The attorney has that authority based on our discussion. So I think that that's one of the reasons that that may have been included within the description. So I do think, based on past discussions, that the attorney has that authority to hire other attorneys.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. And then if I could just comment on this point, I support Mr. Malinowski's suggestion, or others that I think would make it clearer that the opportunities that they have are to review or evaluate. I think Mr. Malinowski said something like, well, I think he said something about the opportunity to restructure if needed, however that's worded. But as we look at attracting professionals, Mr. Malinowski, I would say that I do think that when you look at somebody new coming on board, them understanding the fact that there are vacancies affects how the department runs, but it's also an opportunity for them to build their team. And I think that that's something that can be exciting as you're attracting new people on board. So not saying you have to fill these positions in XYZ time, but someone understanding that they have an opportunity to build a team, considering that they're going to be a leader, is something that I do think would be welcome for someone coming in.
I agree.
Okay, the last point I have, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought this needed a correction. One that under the opportunities page again, 1, 2, 3, the fourth arrow down on the second line where it says about related to penny tax approved twice by the citizens. That was, the penny tax was only approved one time.
Okay.
It
Someone
was
told me it was done twice.
Wait, pardon me, Mr. Malinowski, where are you looking? I've been reading the pretty profile, but where are you seeing that information?
I'm on the generic profile text. It looks like this.
Okay, can you tell me where that is?
It will be the last page, Councilwoman Newton. It's the last page where it says opportunities, and it's the fourth bullet about resolving issues with the Department of Revenue related to penny tax.
Yeah, Ms. Frank, it went to the voters twice, but it was defeated the first time and approved the second time.
Oh, okay.
Approved once, which was so just approved by the citizens.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions about any part of the profile? And then, so Miss Frank, just pardon me, I have just a few small Scrivener's errors, but we also have Miss Barron, and then Miss McBride, and then Miss Mackey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one quick concern, or not concern, but just a thought. I know that the 10 years was brought up as the experience that our legal counsel should have. Is that, could we talk about it a little bit further as to is 10 years with or some type of combination of 10 years of experience? Because I think what I read was that it's 10 years of government experience. And so we may get a good candidate who doesn't have that 10 years of government experience, but maybe have 3 or 4 years of government experience, and then the remaining as practicing law. Is that open for discussion?
The way it is written, it says requires combination of at least 10 years of legal experience in litigation, government, and regulatory law, or any equivalent combination of education, training, and experience that provides the requisite knowledge, skills, and abilities to do the job. That extra language allows us to say, okay, this person has worked 5 years in a government, and before that, they worked in a private sector, but they did government work, they did litigation work, they did regulatory work. So they have a full 10 years of service. So that's what we will be looking at when we look at their resumes. But they do have to have the preference will be given to candidates with 3 to 5 years of municipal attorney experience, whether it's city attorney or county attorney. And they also have to have 2 to 4 years management experience running an office. So we will give preference to those people.
Ms. Barron, did that address your question?
It does to some degree. It does, and I understand the language, and I think the document the initial document I was reading was maybe one, maybe not the final document. So I appreciate Ms. Frank giving the details on that. I guess I'm just, while we want a seasoned attorney, I'm just concerned, about the lockdown in 10 years, but perhaps we'll fare well.
Ms. Barron, may I ask a question just to clarify? Because at first I was under the impression that this wording was addressing your concern fully, but it appears that it's not. So the way that this is written, it's 10 years total, but flexible in terms of how many years you did government and how many years you may have done private practice or other types of law. Are you saying you don't think it should be 10 years at all?
Yes. And initially my concern was twofold, and Ms. Frank addressed that, the part of it, but the other part is the 10 years.
Okay. Would it be appropriate? And I don't know, Ms. Frank, if there's anything that you can share. I mean, we can't, add water and then make candidates appear for these positions. But in terms of the 10 years, where it came from originally was at the suggestion of our previous attorney and deputy attorney, as we look at attorneys and, junior attorneys, senior attorneys, very senior attorneys. For my information, in terms of where you've been recruiting, where does 10 years fall on that spectrum of junior to senior to most senior?
In a county your size, it's very appropriate. But we could put 8 to 10 and give preference to the 10s, but that way it gives a little, but I wouldn't go lower than 8. Because they haven't had enough variety of experience with the law to be able to help you with the multitude of issues you have.
Okay. Ms. Barron, it looks
So
like you
let me know if
unmuted.
you want to do 8.
Yeah. I totally understand, Ms. Frank, that point. I don't think that we would want anyone less than 8 years. As well. But I do like the question that Ms. Newton just coined, and that is, with the 8 to 10 years or the 10 years, where does that put us with getting an attorney? Is it on the senior side, or is it on the lower side of the totem pole?
It's very common for this high of a level of a county attorney to have 10 years.
I don't think you understand the question. That's not
okay.
I don't think you understand the question. The question is, where does the 10 years fall? Is this on the senior side of practicing law, or is it more so junior, mid-year kind of?
I would say mid-year to senior. You may also have people that have 20 years experience, and which is not uncommon. For example, when we've done a city administrators, we usually use 10 years, 8 to 10 years experience, depending on the size. If it's a small community, we don't. And a lot of them come with 15 years, 20 years experience in a variety of municipalities. So your biggest issue on finding candidates is the state of South Carolina's rule that they must have be part of the bar. So basically, we're going to be looking in South Carolina for anyone who's got their bar association certification through the state. and surrounding states where people have their bar association in 2 states, or nationally where people have had a bar certification and moved to another place and want to come back to South Carolina. Because anyone who doesn't have and has 8 to 10 years experience is not going to take the test to pass the bar. And that process will take close to 2 years for them to get into the South Carolina bar, because the test is only given every 6 months. And then they have to go through a background check.
Thanks,
So,
Miss Frank.
Mhm.
Thank you. I'm going to pause that because we have 2 more questions and we still haven't had our salary discussion yet. So I will put this as a question, Ms. Barron, for us to discuss how we want to move forward on the experience front. I believe next was McBride and then Mackey.
I will let Ms. Mackey go first since I've spoken twice.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Ms. Mackey?
Yes, thank you. I guess my main question or concern is related to the years of experience and salary and what we can get for that. And so I'm not sure, Ms. Newton, if that needs to be in executive session when we have a discussion, but that's kind of where my main concerns were that I wanted to address. So is this appropriate now or executive session?
Let's take that up in executive session as we're going to be discussing salary. So if we could, the last question that I see is Ms. McBride's, and then I have 2 just Scrivener's errors where there should be an S, a few places that I can share later, and then we can have a motion for executive session. Ms. McBride?
I just wanted to give Ms. Frank some directions in terms of some of the recommendations that Mr. Malinowski made. Do we need to provide her with a recommendation at some point?
To your question, and I feel like, please correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. McBride, that you had said that you had agreed suggestions, and then where you didn't, you stated those.
Yes.
Ms. Frank, do you feel like you have what you need to make those few changes that you could highlight for the benefit of council?
yes.
Okay. I just didn't want it to leave it loose. And also, just for the record, I think that a county the size of Richland County needs an experienced attorney. And I think that's what Mrs. Franks was getting after. And I think that the 10 years is sort of minimum amount of experience in my terms. So I would definitely support a minimum of 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Ms. Mackey, is your hand raised anew or is that from before?
Sorry, it's from before.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss salary and contractual matters.
So
Madam
moved.
Chair, I move second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to enter executive session to discuss salary and contractual matters related to the county attorney position. Ms. Mathis, will you call the roll?
Nowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English, Newton,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. And I believe that either Ms. Mathis or IT is ready to take us Took me a second to unmute myself. We are back from executive session where we discussed salary and contractual matters for the vacant county attorney position. We are now back and I will entertain a motion to end executive session. Mr. Malinowski.
Just like to also add that no action was taken during executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. Absolutely no action was taken. Except to come back here so that we can vote to leave executive session, and I will entertain a motion.
So moved to come out of executive session.
It's been
Second.
moved. It's been moved and properly seconded to come out of executive session. Ms. Mathis, will you call the roll?
Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride, Mackey,
Yes.
English, Newton,
Yes.
McBride,
What are we voting on? I'm sorry, I'm just coming in.
Coming out of
exiting.
executive session.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. So, Ms. Frank, just to recap our previous conversation before we exited executive session, you were given some suggested changes and modifications to language. You are going to make those changes. My request would be that you highlight them, and then we will distribute that to council as soon as possible so that we have that in advance of the meeting. I'll also reach out to you about the 2 Scrivener's errors that I saw in the document. Additionally, as part of our discussion tonight with council, we will want to make sure that we have a discussion about the experience requirements that we discussed. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have 2 other things that I'd like to ask, and that is in the actual job description, the second page, the first sentence that's highlighted under special certifications and licenses. It says, may be in the process of obtaining South Carolina license if within 2 to 3 months of approval. Ms. Frank, you made the comment that the test is only given every 6 months. So I don't know how somebody would know if they're within that time frame, because is there a guarantee they know they're going to pass the test, even if it's only 2 months away? So I'm not so sure if that is wording that we want to have in there. I think maybe you want to stick with that. They must be licensed.
The reason I put it there is that they've already taken the test and they have a passing score. They tell you what the passing score is. So if you took the test and you have the passing score, the next part of the process is the background. So if they've already taken the test and they're in the background part, then we can go to the state of South Carolina and say, we're looking at this person. Have you found any problems? Can we assume that they'll get their license? So they would have had taken the test already. I mean,
Okay.
I could add that into it.
No, as long as you know what it is. I'm not familiar with that process. So
Right.
as long as that's what it is, that explains it for me. That's fine. Thank you. And the last question I have or comment was on the advertisement for Richland County Attorney page under the general description of position. Going from the first and second sentence where it says reports to the county council, and it says 11 district members elected every 4 years. Members are elected every 4 years, but it's on a rotating basis. They're not all 11 elected at the same time. So I think they need to know that every 4 years they're not going to have a brand new entire 11-member council.
Oh, very good idea. Very good idea.
And that's all. Thank you.
And I'll also put that into the regular documents also.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. And Ms. Frank, the other thing that you were going to do that I did not mention, just to recap, is you were going to include the job description that was provided by the previous county attorney and deputy county attorney for comparison.
Right. The one thing that I looked at both of those before I had our discussion and wanted to see if there was any changes that I would put from the old to the new. And in the the one that I'm recommending, it says serves as legal advisor, and the old one says chief legal advisor. I think I should add that and put a yellow highlight on that.
Okay, thank you. One question for my colleagues, I didn't see where I put it in my notes. One thing that is not mentioned, at least that I saw, that we may or may not want to include is that previously our county attorney acted also as our parliamentarian. I don't know if that is something that we would want to put in here, but we can, if someone has feedback they want to share now, otherwise we can discuss it tonight. Mr. Malinowski?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you that somewhere we need to indicate that the attorney's office will act as a parliamentarian. I mean, they can put somebody else in there, but we do need that when we get to our meetings.
Did you catch that, Ms. Frank?
I'm trying to figure out where, do we put it as a note in the job description? Because
it could go in you have the characteristics. I'm not sure where you would want to put it. Maybe you can think about that and bring it back to us.
Possibly under your highlighted where it starts, duties can include.
okay.
Did anyone else have any thoughts on that? All right, thank you. I want to be respectful of our time. We have 2 other items that are on our agenda. It's 2:29. With your permission, I could give a 60-second bit of information on each if you are open to that before we adjourn. Or certainly we can take longer if you want. I don't want to limit us.
Do it, 60 seconds each.
60 seconds each.
I will say goodbye and start working on this, and I'll talk to you, Councilwoman Newton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So on our agenda, we have discussion of employee evaluation process for the county administrator and also for the clerk to council. So we don't have time to do that here. We'll need to come back, but specifically we will need to determine what process we want to use. So for the county administrator, last year we used an outside firm to help us, in part because our human resources staff in this case report to our county administrator. So we wouldn't want to go that route. It's a little bit awkward. I know that our chair and vice chair have met with the administrator and asked him to do a self-assessment. So that process is happening, but we'll need to come back together and say, do we want to use another outside consultant to help us with that process? How do we want to structure it? And what criteria do we want to use to base that on? And I also just want to mention one of the things that came up very strongly as feedback last time was that we include 360-degree feedback this year. So that's something that we can discuss when it comes back before us. So that's just my short county administrator information. Looking to see if hearts and minds are clear. And also when we come back, and I'll coordinate with you to set up another meeting, we had agreed to give the clerk to council a 90-day evaluation. So likewise, we'll need to establish what the criteria and what the process for that will be. So hopefully that's something that we can take up when we next come together. Did you time me, Mr. Malinowski?
No, I did not, because I just had a sense that you were well within that time.
Thank you, sir.
Mr.
Malinowski?
Could you just quickly tell us what's the 360-degree feedback you referred to?
So last time when we did the interview, there was a self-assessment process, and then there were council members that gave feedback. A 360-degree component would also potentially include members of staff and other team members who are also providing input for us as part of that process.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before we move to item 5? Ms. McBride?
Ms. Warren, are you saying the 360-degree, we recommended that, or you just putting that out?
That was one of the things that when we were talking about the process last time that I know that Chip Jackson had recommended, and I certainly think it's a good idea. So I put it out there just to mention that it was discussed before,
Okay,
so that it can be part of our discussion again.
Right, that's nothing that we decided on.
Correct.
Oh,
that was
right.
never decided.
Okay.
It was just a suggestion that was made last time. And so I just mentioned
Okay, I'm
it.
good with it. And the clerk to council, the 90-day is more or less a review rather than a real evaluation, right?
Sure. Yes. But at the same time, we still will need to do an annual evaluation for that position.
Sure.
And so
But
we'll
I was
need
just
to
saying the
establish
90
criteria.
day is more or less a review period.
Yes,
Okay,
you're
thank
correct,
you.
Ms. McBride. Looking to see. Okay, it looks like hearts and minds are clear on those two things. So I'll coordinate to schedule our next meeting. That brings us to item 5 on our agenda, which is adjournment.
Move for adjournment.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded for adjournment. Ms. Mathis, will you call the roll?
Sure. Malinowski,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English, Newton,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you, everyone.